A special thanks to Intellytech for sending me their light for review. Intellytech has recently made some upgrades to their very popular LiteCloth product range with the 3.0 series, which is basically a complete redesign of the lights and control box and an introduction of multiple light sizes, but also the addition of RGB versions of each size. Today we are looking at the Intellytech Mega 8FC, the current biggest LiteCloth from Intellytech, a 400 watt RGB flex panel with a rated color temperature range of 3000 Kelvin to 9999 Kelvin. But before we get too much into it, let me start off by saying I love Litemats. I have been using my Intellytech LC160 multiple times a week since I got it for lighting both corporate and narrative work. The reason being because they are extremely portable and have a very small footprint on set, while maintaining a high light quality. They're also very lightweight, making them easy to mount and don't make much noise or heat. All of this makes them very attractive over the standard cob plus softbox setups. So this LiteCloth being bigger, brighter and RGB should be the same but better, right? Well, yes, my initial impressions are mostly overwhelmingly positive, but there are a couple of drawbacks to the bigger size and in general a few little quirks. Let's get into the build quality of the light itself, how to set it up and its features. To no surprise, the build quality is great. Intellytech are really up there with the best and this unit feels built to last. I also love the big full color screen added to the control box. It's a nice touch that helps it feel premium. The light on its frame weighs in at about 5.4 kilograms and the control box about 2.8 kilograms and comes with this really nice padded travel case. It slaps together pretty quickly by opening up this frame and twisting the lock on the center bar to keep the frame rigid. Then you can attach a pin clamp to the frame and then onto this 90-degree pivoting stand bracket. You unfold the light mat and mount it to the frame first with the elastic onto the corners. Then do up the heavy-duty buckles, which by the way are apparently rated for 45 kilograms each. I love the overkill here. Then you put the softbox in place, aligning it up with the Velcro on the light mat itself. Tighten its Velcro straps to the frame to keep everything nice and tight. And from there you can add a diffusion sheet and a grid if desired. You then attach the cable from the light to the control box, and then the power cable from the control box to the wall socket. This was all a little awkward to work out at first, but once you have done this a few times, it is pretty simple and takes about 5 minutes. The control box also has your choice of either 2 gold mount or V-mount plates, which can run the light at full power off of normal 14.8 volt batteries, which is a huge benefit. The light has full app control, which we will talk about later, and DMX control. It also has a USB-C port for firmware updates and to power DMX transmitters. Now let's look at the quality of the light. To do this, I brought out my Sekonic C800 light spectrometer. All testing was done at 3 meters away in complete darkness, with the half-stop diff installed on the light. You can see from the testing that overall the light is pretty accurate towards the tungsten end and very acceptable on the daylight end. The extended range past 5600 Kelvin becomes less accurate, but that's not uncommon as LEDs rarely have to go to this kind of temperature, so the fact that we get it at all is a nice bonus. The overall output of the light for me was a little disappointing. It makes sense as it's only 400 watt being spread over such a big area. But on the 3 to 4 projects I've used this on, either shooting or gaffing, the DOPs or myself have wanted more output from it. It's by no means bad, but it seems this is better for controlled lighting environments where you aren't having to deal with light coming into the room from other sources like the sun. You can see here that we had to block the sun, as the key from the light wasn't doing enough. This light is also RGB, which is great because you are able to fix any of the green magenta shifting happening, but also take advantage of using it to add color to your scenes. Keep in mind that there isn't as many RGB chips on this light compared to daylight and tungsten, so you shouldn't expect as much output. Also, I should mention that using the grid gives you about a 38% reduction of output, which is a lot, but not uncommon. Now let's talk optional accessories. The first, which I absolutely recommend, is the extension cables, allowing you to have more distance between the control box and the light itself, which is great for overhead setups. They have 2 options, a 13-inch and a 26-inch. The next accessory is a lantern with skirts. This setup replaces the softbox. It is again great for overhead setups, and the skirts give you great control over where or where not you have light spill. Next, they have a one-stop diffusion, which is a nice alternative that comes with the half-stop diff that comes with the light. And lastly, they have a pop-up diffuser and grid alternative to the softbox. Not only is this a much faster option than the current softbox, but it's also more low profile. I don't actually have this one, but I have ordered one for myself, as I can see this being something I use more often than not just to make the setup quicker. Something else worth mentioning is that it no longer works with the old Intellytech remote, but it does have the previously mentioned app control. As of this review, it's currently only on iOS, but for me, I haven't been able to get it to work. The app can see the light, but it isn't able to add or interact with it. Now I have to say, I know reviewers who haven't had any issues with the app and it works perfectly fine. Even with Intellytech trying to give me tech support, I haven't been able to get it to work on either my iPhone 13 or my iPad. But I have to be transparent about that. With that said, let's talk about negatives and drawbacks. Firstly, the 90-degree pivoting bracket isn't great in my opinion. It's probably fine if you were just having the light just off of the floor on a C-stand, but it looks to barely hold on to the light itself, and because of this, I just don't trust it, especially for overhead setups. I recommend swapping it out for a C-stand knuckle. Next, and this may just take some getting used to, but I don't love the menu/user interface. The main control knobs are clickable, but you can't use them to select, so you are constantly swapping between buttons and dials to control the menu, and it just feels a little clunky. I've spoken to Intellytech about this, and they actually agree, so I would say a firmware update to fix this is likely. Lastly on the negatives is the grid. It's actually very rigid and only just fits on the softbox, and it can be awkward getting it on, meaning you have to adjust the position of the diff and the grid to just barely fit in. I'm sure this is to keep the frame square and tight, but I would like to see a non-rigid option. Now let's talk about the drawbacks. For me, it's just really one thing, and it may just be with the 8FC and not the other smaller 3.0 series lights. Because of its much larger size, you lose a fair bit of the portability and convenience factor of the previous versions that I fell in love with. This is a very personal thing, which is why I wanted to separate it from the negative section, but it really stood out to me and others who I have had use it. In my review of the LC160, I mentioned that I could set up the light in the same amount of time it took me to set up a cob with a softbox, so it was an easy choice to recommend it over a cob. But that's not the case here. I feel as if I could set up a cob and a very large pop-up softbox in a third of the time, as there is a lot more here to set up and strap down, and because of that, it just isn't as convenient to use. Although I should mention the pop-up diffusion accessory would help with this. Now don't get me wrong, I still love this light and it will be my preferred choice if I need to light from overhead or boom a large key light in from high out of frame. Because it's still much lighter and safer to work with, I think the 8FC and the bicolor version are geared more for higher end professional users like gaffers and or permanent studio setups. Overall, I have really enjoyed this light and I'm excited to keep using it on more projects. I think the build quality is tremendous and the quality of light is beautiful. Yes, there are a couple of drawbacks, but it's still going to be a go-to light in my kit for years to come, and I do recommend it. I'll leave links in the description on where you can get this and other smaller 3.0 series lights. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments below, and follow us in the handles below. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.